Okay, so you should see the initial screen, which is COP26. I've just got to change one other thing here. Otherwise, I can't read what's on the screen. That's better. So COP26, opportunities and dangers, so the chance to talk things through, really. Comment initially from the UN Secretary General, just to put this into context, really. Global increase is already happening. We've reached 1.2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels already. Emissions are 62% higher than they were at the start of the COP negotiations back in 1990. World needs to decrease fossil fuel production by roughly 6% every year. And instead, what's happening is we're going in the opposite direction, and we're planning on an annual increase of 2%. A comment then from Extinction Rebellion suggesting that COP26 faces a very significant challenge, as currently few countries and no G20 country have targets in line with the 1.5 degree Celsius increase. And that's confirmed by the very useful link here to the Climate Action Tracker, which does confirm what each country's plans are in terms of that 1.5 degrees Celsius increase. So what does the UK COP26 website say about the forthcoming conference? Well, it does confirm, first of all, that the world is not on track to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. I was a bit surprised to find actually that the Paris targets, if they were met, would result in a warming well above 3 degrees by the end of the century. So a lot more has to be done to keep it to the 1.5. We have to halve emissions over the next decade to reach net zero carbon emissions by the middle of the century. What every country's been asked to do is to communicate or update what they call the NDC, their emissions reduction targets, the nationally determined contributions. And people have been doing that in advance of the COP. So again, what have we got from the website of the UK COP26 organisation? These are the 4 aims that they want to achieve. They want to secure global net zero by mid-century and keep 1.5 degrees within reach, is what they say. Number 2, I think, is a very significant one, and I want to say a little bit more about that in a few minutes. To adapt to protect communities and natural habitats. So it's assuming there is going to be an increase. What's the world going to do about it? The 3rd is mobilize finance, and one of the groups is invited to talk about financing. And then the 4th objective is that the countries need to work together. So a little bit more detail about each of those, but some of you, I guess, have probably got more detail than I have on quite a number of these things. So I'm not pretending to be an expert at all on any of these issues. So the first one, securing global net zero by mid-century. Countries are being asked to come forward with ambitious 2030 emissions reductions targets that will align with reaching the net zero by the middle of the century. And to deliver on those, countries will need to accelerate the phase out of coal, they need to curtail deforestation, and they need to speed up the switch to electric vehicles. And we were chatting about that beforehand, even though they consume a vast number of amount of carbon in the production of the said electric vehicles. Encourage investment in renewables. The second one, the adaptation one, and there's been this report just this week about the adaptation plans for the UK, which I'll say something about. But the adaptation to protect communities and natural habitats. So the climate's already changing, it will continue to change. At COP26, the website says, we need to work together to enable and encourage countries affected by climate change to do these two things: protect and restore ecosystems and build defenses, warning systems, and resilient infrastructure and agriculture to avoid loss of homes, livelihoods, and even lives. It just says that in three lines, but the implications of not doing those things obviously are absolutely massive. Third one, mobilize finance. We're wanting countries to commit to the $100 billion in climate finance each year, and international finance institutions to play their part towards unleashing the trillions, they're saying, in private and public sector finance required. The fourth one's pretty obvious, I think, working together. And finalizing the Paris rule book seems to be a key issue for COP. And these are the detailed rules that will make the Paris Agreement operational, even though the Paris Agreement won't achieve on its own the 1.5 degree Celsius increase that they're aiming to achieve. And then to accelerate action to tackle the climate crisis through collaboration of governments, businesses, and civil societies. So those are the four key aims of COP. So first discussion topic, if you want to choose this group to go into, very broad, with COP just around the corner in November, what are your concerns and hopes for that conference? So that's your option one. We'll talk now about what's going to lead up to option two to talk about. So this week we had the publication of the report of the Climate Change Risk Assessment. It's a UK report, and it's very technical, it's very detailed, and it identified 61 risks and opportunities as the UK heats up. So this is the adaptation action that I mentioned earlier on. It's what the UK will do because climate change is happening. So it's not about stopping climate change, it's really saying these are the things that need to be done because climate change is happening. And the report is saying that adaptation action has failed to keep pace with the worsening reality of climate risk. However, the UK has the capacity to respond effectively to these risks, but it's not yet done so. It's been described as the Cinderella area of climate change. The report says that acting now will be cheaper than waiting to deal with the consequences later. And 8 risks are identified that require the most urgent action. It's a very good read. I've not read all of it by any means, but I've had a dip into it, and it's a very impressive production. So the question that really I'd like the second breakout group to discuss is about this question. What are the chances of a +3 or 5 degrees Celsius rise? The report I've just mentioned, the CCRA3, that identified 61 risks, they're about if the climate keeps on heating and what's going to be done in the UK. So these are the implication and adaptations if the temperature rise by as much as 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. So that's one question. This particular question is a different one. It's what are the chances of these temperature increases actually happening by the year 2100? So the first is what needs to be done because climate change is happening. The question I'd really like us to address this morning is what are the chances of the worst case scenario, in a sense? So the following slide is an attempt at a risk assessment. And I confess it's something I've done. I've had a look on the internet to try and find such a risk assessment. I was disappointed that I couldn't find one. Other people might say, oh yes, all you really need to do, Andrew, is to look at, whatever, and there is one. But even if there is one, I've had a stab at it, and I'd like to see what you think about it, really. So what I've done is to select 12 risks, each of which, in my humble opinion, could cause a greater than 1.5 degree C rise. And I've assessed each risk on a scale of 1 to 4. And I've assessed it, first of all, in terms of the impact if each were to happen, and then secondly, on the likelihood of each happening. So number 1 would be a low score, number 4 would be a high score. So this is it. And this will be available in the breakout room. So perhaps another way would be perhaps just to take a photograph of it if you were so inclined. But in column A, what I've done is to identify the 12 risks which I feel would be getting in the way of 1.5 degree Celsius not being achieved. Column B is the assessment of the likely impact of them not being achieved, or the risk happening, whichever way you like to look at it. Column C is assessment of the likelihood of that risk happening. And then column D is B times C, which gives the overall level of risk, which I've then color coded. Green being an acceptable risk, amber a very worrying risk, and red being a totally unacceptable risk. In my view, it's all my thoughts on this. So just taking not all of them, I don't think we'll go through now. You have them in the breakout room. But for instance, a risk is that COP26 fails to achieve the goals that they have set for themselves in Glasgow in November. Now, I've perhaps been a bit cynical here. I think the assessment of the likely impact here is very great. If they don't achieve the goals, the consequences are very severe. But this is the cynical bit. I think the likelihood of that happening is very slight. I think they will achieve their goals, or they'll say they'll achieve their goals because it's politically acceptable for them to do so, and they'll all get a lot of kudos for saying that they've agreed it. So I've brought it out as a level 4 risk, a green risk, an acceptable risk, because I think the PR will come in and they'll claim to have agreed. You might take a different view, obviously. However, number 2, I think is much more serious, that whilst they will say what their goals are and they'll agree with them, they'll fail to deliver on their pledges. Far be it from me to suggest that the UK government sometimes fails to deliver on its pledges, but I'll leave that to you to discuss. Number 3, a significant number of citizens of committed countries fail to take the individual actions needed, and I've scored that as 8, amber. Some governments and banks fail to disinvest in fossil fuels as they promised to do so, a 9, another amber. Linked to that, some fossil fuel companies fail to leave their stranded assets in the ground. The argument being that if the stranded assets, if the fossil fuels are taken out of the ground and used, we will well exceed the 1.5 degree Celsius. So I've scored that as a 12, a red risk, and so on. The tipping points, just to pick out a few of these, 2 of them I've scored as red. The thawing of the tundra releasing massive quantities of methane, I've scored as a 12. Similarly, the melting of the ice caps, a 12. The Amazon basin, maybe only a 9. But 12, the world fails to eliminate 2 or more of the amber or red risks. And that must be a red. It must be a 16. I mean, if you could score it higher, I probably would. That's my analysis, folks. See what you think and see whether you come up with similar sort of conclusions or whether you're much more optimistic, perhaps, than I've suggested here. But what I'm going to suggest for the group discussion is that people in option 2 pretend that they're in the trustees meeting of the planet. So you're the planet's trustees and you're in a meeting, and as every good trustees meeting should do on a regular basis is to study the risk assessment for that organization. So what you're asked to do is to consider the extent to which you agree with the 12 risks that I've identified as needing not to happen if 1.5 is to be achieved. How far do you accept the risk assessment that I've shown for each? Say you might think it's absolute utter rubbish and you come up with something completely different. That's fine. In light of your conclusions, how likely is it that global heating will exceed an additional 1.5 degrees Celsius? Is it highly likely, likely, probable, possible, unlikely, highly unlikely? If it is going to exceed 1.5 degrees, by how much? Is it under 1 degree extra? Is it 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, etc.? So if your analysis, oops, sorry, gone too far. If your analysis leads you to a pessimistic outcome, what, if anything, now needs to happen to mitigate the forthcoming catastrophe? I've left the final column blank, the actions to mitigate risks. I did have a stab at this, but I think it would be much better if you could come up with some ideas about what actions could go in that final column to mitigate the risks. But a general discussion on the topic is also fine. The third one is rather more specific. The third option is about influencing the UK government on financing. The COP26 Faiths Task Group is calling for a global green and just recovery from the pandemic, and suggesting all government decisions should be guided by this particular goal. So finance is key to that and to the principle of climate justice. So that the third group, the options or the suggested topic I'm putting forward there is how can we influence the government to achieve those 4 particular bullet points, which I won't read now because if you're in that group, Julian will have those available for you to look at. And I think you've heard enough from me at this stage. I think we need to get into the groups.
I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can.
Hello?
Keep going, Rose. We could hear you.
I last visited the school on 26th of last month, and that's when I took of this building. By then we had not started roofing, but we had finished all the major construction work. These are some of the children. They were checking out the building. They usually do this almost every day. We have asked them to get involved into the building process by helping, like lifting materials from the stores to the site. So we are trying to create a sense of ownership and a sense of love to work. And we've asked them to, whenever they have a break in a safe way, to go and watch the builders as they build, so that we maybe they could develop a love to be builders in the future, to construct houses and buildings. So when I came back on the 26th, I left when the roofing has started, and this is how the building looked like a couple weeks ago before they installed the doors and the rest of the items. This is how it looks like. We've put white roofs on the top in the middle, 4 pieces of them to allow in more light in the building. Yes, there will be electricity within for lighting, but this will increase more light, most especially during the day when the lights are switched off. Oh, this is how it looks like from another angle. It's so beautiful, and just to note, the community members are very surprised that they've never seen this kind of toilet within the community. It's one of the kind actually in the sub-county, and we do appreciate this. They are so happy for the children that they are going to use this kind of beautiful facility. On my team, the Infinity Ideas Network, we have Deacon Morris. He's soon completing his studies to become a priest in the Catholic Church, and he has always helped out, go to Monta and supervise the construction work since he works within the community, the local church. This is when the windows were closed. We used this kind of ventilation because it allows in more light in the building, and it also brings in more fresh air. So the children, we did this to help them. With no fresh air within the building, it might lead to some problems, and we want to keep their health. That's why we are constructing a very nice building facility in which they can practice personal hygiene and take care of. This is how it looks from outside and inside, fresh air. We regularly monitor the progress of the construction, and I've asked a few volunteers, good friends of mine, to continue visiting the site, checking to make sure that the work is going on well. The builders have enough materials, and they are doing what we asked them to do according to the plans we had. Yes, so this is Roger in the yellow cap. He went to visit to see how far the activity had gone, and those are the builders. They are all covered in cement and I think some stuff.
It looks as though they've been busy.
Yes, they've been busy. The doors were also installed. We used the wooden doors for the washrooms and the toilets, and metallic doors at the entrance of the rooms, because the wooden doors are better with water, and we left a little space on the floor to enable, to make sure that the water does not easily splash to the door, and it does not get destroyed faster. And we made sure that the doors lock properly, we checked that several times. We've also had conversations with the directors and the head teacher and the children as well. We've asked them what they think of the current progress, and they like it. They like the work that is being done. The directors also do monitoring each and every day since their home is near, and they do check out on the children and the work that is being done. Currently, the walls are being tiled for the washrooms and the toilet and the floor. And we hope that this work will be done in a week's time. And we will be able to do the next shift of putting in electric wiring, so that there is enough light, most especially during the night. We have along the way faced a problem for scarcity of water. This happened last week when I was notified about the lack of water within the school. They had used up all the water in the 4 tanks, and there was little left to be used. Sadly, there was also there is road construction going on within the district and the local community, and this has led to the water pumps, the water pipes that are bringing water provided by the national water company to be cut off. So there is no provision of water. All community members have been relegated to fetching water from the ponds. If you remember well, I presented a few pictures of the water ponds that we have in the community. And these are what the people in the community are fetching from. Luckily, we secured 10,000 liters of water for the children to fill up 1 tank. And this is what they are currently using. We've asked them not to fetch from the water ponds because the water there is not clean. And I know there is long lines, and we are not sure when the water is going to be connected, most especially the national water. And this is a season for rain, for sunshine. It's been shining since the spring up to August. We just so that we are able to collect some water. Besides the above, we've continued to do the work. The walls have been plastered, and we hope that soon we will be doing painting. We will be painting and installing in electricity for light for the children. We thank you all for your donation and for continuously keeping on checking on us. The children are very happy and they send greetings. The directors are grateful. The community people are very surprised and happy for the children of what we are having. It's a new facility. It's a modern one. It's different from what they've been having. I believe they may want to come and use the facility.
Rosemary,
but we'll try to ask them not to.
Rosemary?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Look, time has gone. It's been a wonderful report. It's really good news to know that this work is going ahead. And we're very mindful of the fact that, of course, the boys are now going to be very jealous And but it's great that the girls have got ahead of the boys in this sense, because normally it's the other way around, isn't it? So it's great that girls will be able to have some decent facilities very soon. And we're mindful also of the fact that there's an ongoing water problem, and we've got a bid in to the local Rotary Club in Barnet, and through them to the International Rotary, to try and seek money for a new water borehole on the premises, which will be available to the community.